Hi and welcome back. We're so glad that you are joining us today. We're out here in the garden and today we're going to talk about the 7 easiest vegetables that you can grow in your garden to feed your family. So whether you're just starting out with a garden, it's your first time growing a garden, or if you're just really starting to get into the self-sufficiency thing and you want to grow as much of your food as possible, no matter what the case might be, these 7 vegetables are really good to start with for either of those situations. Or if you have been gardening for a long time, but you're wanting to move more toward a purpose for your garden, or like growing the things with more intention. So that's what these 7 things are going to be. I wish we had them growing right now, but it's not summertime. So all these are summertime vegetables, with the exception of one for us. However, I wanted to go ahead and talk about this now, because if you want to grow these, right now is the time to be planning and planning your garden, preparing your garden, and getting ready to plant them. Because if I waited till we had these things growing, it would be too late for you. So that's why we're doing this now. So one thing I do want to say before we really dive in, if you are brand new to gardening and if you're making a garden for the first time this year, I would strongly recommend that you take some soil samples and either send them off to be tested, or I'll put a link. We've used this home soil test before and it works good. It doesn't tell you as many things as like if you send it off, but if you want to send your soil off to be tested, usually your local county agent does that. Because then you can know like what deficiencies your soil has, what you need to put in it. Because if your soil, like if the pH is off, or if it's really deficient in certain nutrients, you can plant all you want and it will not grow, which defeats the purpose. So my criteria for the vegetables that made this list was easy to grow, very prolific, easy to save seeds from, be self-sustaining, and stores or produce as well. And there are a couple on my list that didn't check every single box, but most of them did. So number 1 is green beans. Green beans are one of the first things that I started growing when I started, after I got married and started my own garden. They're one of the first things that I planted, and they're super easy to grow. In our growing season, like if you have a long growing season, you can actually plant 2 crops of them per season, which is what we do. They freeze or can really well, so they're easy to preserve. As far as seed saving, especially if you only grow one variety, beans are really easy. You just, instead of picking the pods, you leave them on the plant to mature and dry, and then once they're dry, you pick them off, shell them, and there are your seeds. If you're planting more than one variety, they can cross-pollinate, so a lot of these things, they're more difficult to save if you're doing more than one variety, because they do all cross-pollinate. Oh, and if you're interested in seed saving, that's definitely something that I really enjoy and am learning more about. I highly recommend this book. It's called The Seed Garden by, I think that's Michaela Colley and Jaron Zystro. I'll link it in the description box, but it's actually my mom's book. It's been living at my house for a while, but it's a really, really good seed starting book. It goes through like all of the different varieties and whether you can save them, how to save them, if they cross-pollinate, what they cross-pollinate with. So it's super, super jam-packed of information. I would highly recommend it. Number 2 is summer peas, and that's pretty much identical to green beans. They're easy to grow. They are the same as green beans. If you're going just one variety, you can save the seeds from them easily. They're prolific. For a warmer climate, you can plant 2 different batches of them per season. So green beans and summer peas both are the same thing. And summer peas would be things like black-eyed peas, pink-eyed purple hull peas, crowder peas, cow peas, just not like your little green English peas. Those are winter, like a cold weather crop. Number 3 is zucchini and summer squash. Now, zucchini and summer squash, in my opinion, don't check the box of being easy to preserve, but everything else, they're easy to grow. They do have a few common pests, which if you can get over that, They will make so many that even your neighbors will be tired of zucchini and summer squash because you won't even be able to give enough away. They just make and make and make and make and make and make and make. So they are one that, and there's a lot of different ways you can cook them. Like you can stuff them and you can roast them and you can fry them. If you've never had fried squash, you're missing out. So there's so many different ways you can make them. I do think they're a little bit not great on the preserving just because they don't last very long. You can freeze them, but they turn to mush. So what I'm gonna try this year, I'm interested to see, I've read some things about dehydrating them. So that's what I'm gonna try this year. You can use them dehydrated for like soups, breads, things like that. I'm looking forward to trying it. Also, they do cross-pollinate very easily if you're planning on keeping seeds. So like even squash, zucchini, if they're within the same species, they will cross-pollinate. So if you want to save seeds and have multiples, you would just need to either bag the blooms. In this book, get the book because it tells you how to hand pollinate and all that stuff. Number 4 is potatoes. And potatoes, depending on where you live. So for us, potatoes you plant, like we planted ours about 2 weeks ago. Potatoes are not the heat of summer crop for us. They're like a super early spring or fall crop, but other places like that have cooler growing climates are more in the summertime, so that's why I included them. But potatoes are a powerhouse. Like they are loaded with nutrition. They produce a ton, especially for what you plant. They're also easy to grow. Like you put them in the ground and you might have to hill some dirt around them as they grow, but that's it. Like you don't have to pick bugs off of them. You don't have to do anything to them really. Just don't let them dry out completely. But potatoes are really, really, really good. They have like literally kept societies from starving to death. You should grow some potatoes if you don't grow potatoes. And they're another one of those things that there are so many different ways you can cook them. They keep really well, and also you can can them. I don't know that you would like dehydrate them. I guess you could if you wanted to, but canning potatoes is very popular and easy to do. And potatoes are also a super sustainable crop because the way you plant potatoes is you use the potatoes that you grew, and then they start sprouting. You cut little pieces off and you plant those. So like your potatoes are just kind of this perpetual sustainable crop, as long as they don't get some kind of disease or something like that. You can watch, I'll link to the last video where we planted our potatoes just a few weeks ago. It was really exciting. All right, so number 5 is winter squash and pumpkins. Now, these take up a lot of space, so if you're short on space, they might not be the best thing for you to grow. But if you have the room for them, winter squash and pumpkins will make tons, typically. They do need rich soil, so if you plant them in poor soil like I did last year, they're not gonna do anything. But if you plant them in the right soil and give them what they need, they will produce so many. They store really well. There's a lot of different varieties that you can do. And I mean, they'll store long enough. You pick them in the fall. A lot of times they'll make it till like next spring. They will store a really long time, certain varieties of winter squash and pumpkins. For preserving, they can either be frozen or canned. Those are kind of the 2 most popular ways. If you want to preserve them for longer, then they will stay fresh. And also, they do readily cross-pollinate just like the squash and zucchini do. So if you're growing more than one variety and you want to save seeds, you'll have to somehow isolate those blooms and hand-pollinate them. So number 6 is okra. In our like hot and humid summers that we have, okra is the bomb. It just makes and makes and makes. It's like the hotter and more humid it is, the better the okra does. It just puts out and puts out and puts out. So okra will just keep putting out and putting out. It makes so fast that typically during the summertime, we have to pick every single day or the okra just will get so fast, so big, so quick that it gets tough. So okra can be frozen. It's super easy to freeze for things like stewing it down, putting it in gumbo, soups and things like that. All you have to do is just slice it up, freeze it flat on a pan, and then take it off and put it in a Ziploc bag. It can be blanched, but we don't typically blanch it. It's just an extra step that isn't necessary for what we do with it. It can be canned, it can be pickled, which is my husband's favorite way to eat. He loves pickled okra. So that's one of the big things I'm gonna be doing this summer is pickling okra. But yeah, like if you have a hot and humid summer, okra just about can't be killed. It just goes and goes and goes and goes and goes. Number 7 is tomatoes. And I almost didn't include tomatoes because I don't feel like they are a super easy thing to grow. I think they can be a little more challenging. They're a little more finicky to like your soil conditions, and if the nutrition is just perfect, birds get into them, worms get into them. So I feel like they are definitely a little more on the tricky side. But I went ahead and included them because you can do so much with tomatoes. Pasta sauce, pizza sauce, spaghetti sauce, stewed tomatoes, diced tomatoes. Like there's just literally so much you can do with tomatoes. You can dry them. So that's why I included them. And if you can get a few things right, like your soil and the nutrition and all that stuff, they will make and make and make. You will be overrun with tomatoes. And plus, growing tomatoes for yourself, it will be the best tomatoes you have ever put in your mouth. And you probably will be like me and become a tomato snob. Like I don't eat tomatoes from the grocery store because that's like colored styrofoam. After you've had your own fresh garden tomatoes, especially a lot of the heirloom varieties that are just so like flavor over the top. Over the top. They're delicious. So tomatoes. And then I have one little bonus, and it's not something that is gonna feed your family, but it is something I think every single person should have grown in their garden, and that is garlic. Because garlic is one of the easiest things you will ever grow. You literally put the cloves of garlic in the dirt with the root side down and the pointy side up, cover them up with dirt, and leave them until it's time to dig them out in the summertime. So they are one of the absolute easiest things you will ever grow. And it's very, very, very nutritious. Garlic is so good for you, and you're gonna get like so many more benefits by growing your own garlic than getting garlic from, you know, somewhere that's grown in a foreign country. And anyway, I really put a lot of value on things that are locally grown, that you have grown yourself. I think there's just so much more nutrition into it, and taste and flavor. Garlic, plant you some garlic. It's gonna be good. Trust me on this one. And garlic, it keeps really for a long time, especially if you grow it yourself, because the stuff you get from the store is really not very fresh. You don't get it right when they pick it. Also, it can be fermented, it can be canned, it can be roasted. Like there's a lot of things you can do with garlic. And garlic is just like potatoes as far as you plant your garlic from the garlic of last year. So as long as you save back enough heads, the head is the whole thing, the cloves are the individual pieces. So just save back some cloves, save back some heads of garlic, and you plant those cloves for your next year's crop. So they're like potatoes. They're a really sustainable crop. Easy, because you don't have to worry about mixing different varieties, cross-pollination, and all that stuff. Now I do want to say there's kind of a caveat to this, and that is that even though these 7 vegetables are easy to grow, and it is something that you can feed your family with, that's if your family will eat this stuff. So don't plant a ton of okra if your family doesn't eat okra. And don't plant like 3 rows of green beans if your family won't eat green beans. So just use common sense in that way. I know we, tend to want to experiment, and maybe they'll eat them, maybe they won't. But if you really want to do it for food production, plan your garden according to what your family is going to eat. Don't fall into the trap of just wanting to plant everything and then it goes to waste because nobody in your house will eat it. So I hope this was helpful and that you enjoyed it, and I hope that it inspired you to start planting your garden and being intentional about the things that you plant to feed your family with. I'm super excited about that this summer, and then during the summer we'll do some garden tours and show you some of this stuff as it's growing. So we hope you enjoyed this, and we will see you in the next video. Thanks. Bye. You gonna wave bye?
Bye.
And most people like green beans, so they're pretty easy to... Stop doing that. Stop doing that. Okay, baby James, you need to be happy so we can get this done. You literally put the, what are they called? Cloves.
Hey, and welcome back. This is our first year And we're just sitting here in the garden. And I don't know what we're going to do in this video, but this is going to be a good video since we're gonna do something, but I don't know what we're gonna do about this video. The 7 vegetables to feed your family. That's the end. Bye.